All right, welcome to the Detroit Lions News Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Chapp. We are going to be talking about Lions news, and then I have a question for you that was fascinating to me. I really thought it was a really careful question by a listener on my Twitter who actually had a really good comment, and I think it's something that we should bring up. So, obviously, Lions news. Sam LaPorta returned back to practice. Thomas Harper has an ankle injury. He missed the practice last week, and he missed the Commanders game. He will. He, Cable was asked, could he be ready this week? He said, I think it's unlikely, but you never know. Damone Clark will be out indefinitely, so he probably won't make the roster. We know Cade Mays is out with a wrist injury from 8 to 10 week recovery. Scruggs has slid to center and is competing with Seth McLaughlin. Detroit signed offensive lineman Gus Hartwig, who has extensive center experience for depth behind the Mays injury. Kareem Hunt visited the Detroit Lions on Tuesday, per Adam Schefter. Hunt, 31 years old, played in all 17 games last year, 611 yards rushing and 8 touchdowns. So 8 touchdowns is pretty damn good for only it doesn't say the carries, but 611 yards, eight touchdowns on a 3.7 average, plus 18 catches for 143 and a score. He left the facility without a contract. So, there was an interesting comment, and I want to get to this because this is the most fascinating conversation. You know, a lot of people I saw some Twitter discussion about Monty. And, obviously Isaiah Pacheco has an injury right now. We don't know the extent of it. We don't know if he's going to be healthy for week one. That's all up in the air. Obviously, they've brought a lot of running backs in, and I've been saying from the get-go, this running back room is a little bit of an issue now. James on the podcast, he'll downplay it a little bit, but deep down inside, I know he also believes that there's a little bit of an issue when you get past Pacheco in terms of a run game. So you can probably see Jacob Saylors being the guy who could potentially be the third running back. But if Detroit really wants to take it to the next level, they'll get another running back. Kareem Hunt obviously was brought in. Raheem Blackshear got hurt. He's going to be out for a while. He's on IR. We've mentioned in the podcast. But when we talk about this Detroit Lions team, a lot of the Twitter conversation yesterday that I saw was from a David Montgomery post by a fan who used to run Lions on Tap. And he said, wouldn't it be great to have Montgomery now? And it was a great conversation because there's a lot of people in the comments that were like, look, I think Dave Montgomery wanted to go. I even commented, I said, look, clearly, by the way Brad Holmes talked about the situation, clearly Dave Montgomery wanted out of Detroit. Clearly, Dave Montgomery wanted to go to another situation where he's going to get the chance to have carries. And obviously, you go to Houston, and Woody Marks and him will be splitting carries 50-50. It wouldn't be 50-50 in Detroit. We know that for sure, especially when you're paying a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs upwards of the highest contract in football for a running back. So let that be there. The comment, it was a Twitter post by, I'm going to put his name up here because I wanted to mention him simply because this is a great comment. It's Matt, the real MVP, Matt Van P. He's the Canadian listener. We love the Canadians. He said this, and it was very, very interesting what he said. He said, regardless if Mays hurt, Scruggs was always more important. Anyone can come in for 10 carries a game. And I feel like this is a debate that could really be skewed for whatever reason that you want to talk about. Look, Monty was a huge portion to this Detroit Lions team. We all know that Montgomery was huge in terms of what he was able to bring to the Detroit Lions. But let's not downplay it. The trade for JuiceScruggs really is massive once we think about it. Think about it. Everyone and their mother loves Seth McLaughlin. They love this guy. They think, I heard people on Twitter going, he's going to be great. He was a, Remington winner, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Settle down. Cincinnati let him go for a reason. Obviously, he had injury history, but come on. Let's just leave it be, right? So, Seth McLaughlin so far in preseason has looked awful. He's given up some of the most sacks in the NFL preseason. So just put that there. Imagine if you didn't have Juice Scruggs. Imagine. And I think this is an open-ended question for people that are, on the fence. They want Montgomery. Okay, there's people that think Juice Scruggs is. I think Juice Scruggs is the more important player. This is why I'm interested to hear your comments in the YouTube, in the comments, because I think Montgomery is important from the perspective of having a solid, reliable number two, right? But I also think that Juice Scruggs being the player that came back in the Montgomery trade might have been a godsend. Because can you imagine, just imagine you send out Seth McLaughlin on week 1 against the Saints. Now, luckily enough, the Saints will not have Brian Brzee. He's out for the year. But what I'm trying to say is this might have been a blessing in disguise for the Detroit Lions. And Matt brought up a huge, great point. Like, obviously, Montgomery is going to get 10 carries a game. But I thought for a minute, like, this is an absolute great debate. And I'm interested to hear what people think in the comments. Because when I talk about the ability to have Juice Scruggs, I thought Juice Scruggs had his first preseason game was pretty good for coming off an injury. I thought it was really good, actually. And I was impressed by it. I think Juice Scruggs, if we want to play back the last year, is better than Graham Glasgow, and he's better than Kingsley Egwakon, who was the second string center for Detroit last year. That being said, I do miss Monty. I wish Monty was on the team because Monty has always played an influential role in this Detroit Lions team, especially with what he's been able to do, backing up Gibbs. And obviously, Gibbs is going to get more of a workload this year. I'm interested to see how they divvy it up. I would have loved to see Brad Holmes get a rookie running back, but they bring in Pacheco. Pacheco is hurt, and they're bringing in running backs right now. And this was a topic of conversation on like Twitter, Facebook. I saw a lot of groups talking about it, and I wanted to talk about it because it's a fascinating argument. Because on one hand, people are like, "Look, Montgomery would have been great right now," and then on the other hand, you can't really argue with Scruggs is actually a godsend because of the fact that if you didn't have him, you're going to the center market, which is not all that good. You're really relying on hope. I mean, you can go get Elton Jenkins. There's some has been, but I mean, even the Chargers right now, who lost their center for the year, I think that they're in a little bit of a pickle unless they can find someone. Which I think they have a player who's on their is playing right now, who's playing pretty damn good. So it's going to be interesting. But this was an interesting conversation. I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say because, in my opinion, about the Scruggs argument and the Montgomery argument, yes, it sucks to lose Dave Montgomery, but holy hell, would it be bad if we didn't have Drew Scruggs? Holy hell, it would be bad. I mean, no one thinks of Cade Mays as getting injured, in training camp. No one thinks of that. And I think the flexibility that Juice Scruggs has playing center and playing guard was actually pretty clutch by Brad Holmes. I got to give Brad Holmes credit for that one. I mean, there was a good chance that if he didn't make that trade and he decided to go with another trade that got him more draft picks, there's a potential that you're right now looking at your center being Seth McLaughlin in week 1, which is a terrifying thought, to be honest. I like Seth McLaughlin. I think over time he might be a good backup, but at this point in time, he is not. Just go watch the tape. He's not a good backup at all at this point. He's good for the practice squad, but not for the active roster. So I found it fascinating that people were actually debating this. I found it fascinating that people were arguing for Monty. I found it fascinating there's people that were actually saying, look, if we didn't have Scruggs, we'd be screwed. And I could see both sides of the coin. What side do you fall on in terms of Juice Scruggs and Dave Montgomery? Do you think that the Dave Montgomery trade actually worked out for Detroit in the grand scheme of things? Let me know in the comments below, and we'll see you next time on the Detroit Lions News Podcast. Thanks for watching.